Sounds good. We should probably wait a couple minutes though,
Yeah.
another minute or so.
Morning, folks. Welcome. I realized this morning as I was preparing that I always just dive in and never introduce myself. So it's just like some weird lady talking at you for being in any of these meetings. For those that don't know me, my name is Anna Holder. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an environmental scientist with the State Water Board and the program coordinator for our bioaccumulation monitoring program and co-chair of the STEW, as we call ourselves, along with the amazing Jay Davis, who's going to take things away here in a second. So why don't we go ahead and start advancing to get through some logistical goodies. We're all Zoom pros by now, probably, and I actually might remove these slides next year. But just in case you need a refresher, your Zoom controls in the application are on the bottom pane. We highly encourage the use of reactions, emojis, and utilizing the chat. And, raising your hand and contributing in a way that makes sense for you. Next slide, please. Right, we're recording this meeting. It will be posted on our YouTube and linked to our safety workgroup page. And live transcripts have been enabled, so you'll be able to turn those off or on depending on your needs. Go ahead and next slide, please, Jay. Awesome. So at the beginning of all of our meetings, I like to start by acknowledging tribal lands in California and express my deep gratitude for them. The Cali PA building and the hub of this work group is located in a place that we now call Sacramento, California. Sacramento was and still is a gathering place for many local tribes who have lived throughout the Central Valley and foothills since time immemorial and are the original stewards of these lands and waters. These people include the Nishanan, Maidu, and Miwok peoples and the Putwin and Wintun nations, who've remained committed to the stewardship of these lands and waters over many centuries. And it's really important for us to recognize that our organization sits on tribal lands of Indigenous peoples and that we are here because of the sacrifices that have been forced upon them. And in acknowledging and remembering these communities in all of the work that we do, we hope to honor their legacies, their lives, and their descendants. And that's a cool link that I like to check out to learn more about the tribal lands that I'm on, and I invite you to do the same. Okay, let's dive in. Take it away, Jay.
Okay, so for those who don't know me, quick intro. I'm Jay Davis. I'm with the San Francisco Estuary Institute, co-lead of the STEW with Anna, and also was the lead of this group was formerly known as the Bioaccumulation Oversight Group, or BOG, and I've been leading that since it began in around 2006. So it's great to have you guys joining us today. We'll start with a roll call, and going down our list here. When I call off your category, if you could raise your virtual hand, that would be good. So starting with the peer review panel. All right, Harry's gotten us off to a good start here. Thanks, Harry. EPA. I meant US EPA, but well, that counts though. Thanks, Lauren. But we're going to need you to raise your hand again. OEHA. Right. Moss Landing. I anticipate Autumn to be joining us as well. Hopefully soon. Okay, regional boards, Region 1. Oh, there's Autumn. Region 2. Thanks, Gerardo. Region 3. Region 4. Thanks, Emily. Region 5. Thanks, Jordan. Region 6. Great, Kelly. Region 7. Region 8. Thanks, Heather. And Region 9. Great, Chad. Okay, so State Board, folks. Great. Monitoring Council. Saw Nick kind of walking around somewhere, so he's out there too. Okay, anybody who is not in those categories that I haven't mentioned a category for you yet, please raise your hand. Thanks, Alan. And if you're in that other category, please add your affiliation in the chat box. And I also see Kelly Chen, which is good because she's presenting later. Okay, for folks who are joining, please add your name and affiliation in the chat box. All right. So quick review of the agenda. We've done the roll call, and looking over the agenda and thinking about goals for the meeting. We'll do our usual quick updates. We're going to have an update on the 2023 sampling, and this is a nice time to do that at the end of the sampling season. We'll spend a little more time and discuss how the year went. Then we'll be talking about the sampling plan for next year, and finalizing that is our desired outcome, because we need to get the collection permit application in. Then we'll take a short break, and then we're happy to have a presentation by Kelly Chen from Department of Public Health on the Biomonitoring California program, and particularly PFAS work that they're doing. And then Anna's going to close us out with the next few items: of realignment update, and then a discussion of the long-term priorities assessment, which is something that we want to really get moving on in the next few months. And related to that, we'll be planning some meeting dates, and then we'll wrap up. So pretty short and sweet agenda. Any questions about the agenda, or does anybody have any constraints with attending for these items? Seems like Nick's going for a run or something. Okay. Is there anything in the chat, Anna? We good to go?
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with the quick updates. And for the first couple of items, there's not much new to report. We've been in a holding pattern waiting for organics data to be processed for the 2020 coast. The reporting on that will come later after we have the full coast data set. I'll mention that again later. And then for 2021, panel 4 of the Bass Lakes, we're also waiting for the organics data to be processed. Jennifer, do you have an update for us on the status of that?
Yeah, I'll jump in here.
Okay.
So we don't have timelines yet, but Jennifer and Tessa and Swamp IQ and others are making progress on getting the organics data to us. So we're hopeful that we'll be receiving it soon. But yeah, stay tuned on that.
Okay, thanks.
So
Anna.
they are sending me the lab reports, but they're still having some difficulties with submitting the EDDs. We're still working with them, trying to load all the isotopic dilution analogs because they didn't give it to us ahead of time. It's just kind of behind it. And so I've been working with Babcock trying to get all the names that are in our QAP to match. Offline, Jay and Autumn, I do have an extra analyte that isn't in our QAP that I'd like to have a discussion with you about, that they placed in the EDD, from the EDDs for
Okay.
an OCH.
Okay. Thanks for the additional detail, Jennifer.
I was just going to quickly add. So there was 3 samples from 2020 that were kind of missing. So they found those, they've been analyzed, they've given us the lab report. And so we're just, like Jennifer said, getting them in the right format to get them in the database. So we, at least those data exist now. We just need to get them in the right place.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, and Jennifer, just happy to follow up on whatever you need from me and Autumn. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a decision about whether or not we take it or leave it. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 2022, and these are the projects that we had. The mercury data have been analyzed and reported, and we're waiting on organics analysis there. Then we like to list the new consumption advisories, and we continues to crank these out on a regular basis. Anna keeps track of that. So El Capitan was the one that was issued in the last quarter. Anything else to say on that, OEHA?
Hey Jay, it's Wes. We are currently working on South Lake in Inyo County. So that will be the next one we release.
Great. And while you popped up there, there's also news from OEHA on their team, and Wes has become the lead of the sportfish. I'm not sure exactly what you call the unit.
So I've replaced Susan Clasing as the section chief for the fish ecotoxicology and water section. So as we joke in the oil spill world, I'm the new Susan.
So congratulations, Wes.
Thank you.
All right. So updates on TMDLs. This is where we usually put Lauren Smitherman on the spot. But if anybody's got any information on the TMDLs.
Just a reminder, her name is Lauren Lelis now as well. We are, no worries. I'm not offended at all. So we're currently in the process of moving forward with the scientific peer review. We're trying to get to that place. I'm not sure what the last update Lauren provided to you all. I'm not sure what news is news, but that's probably the current status of the Delta methylmercury DMCP review, TMDL.
Great, thank you. Okay, Monitoring Council updates. Anna, maybe you start this off and.
Sure. Nick and Peter, feel free to chime in. So the next meeting is going to be December 14th. It's going to be hybrid in person at Squirp. The agenda will be posted at the link that's attached or that's provided here. And we'll be providing a safety work group update that's going to focus on the realignment in 2024 just to prepare the council for what's ahead, so that they can prepare to contribute in a way that works for them. Anything else, Peter or Nick, that you want to add?
No, thanks, Anna. I think the main theme of that meeting, beyond the update from the stew, will be focused mainly on microplastics. So, and I'll be sending out announcements to anybody that's signed up for the Gov delivery category for.
Oh, you just muted yourself. Classic Zoom. I think are you back, Nick? Go ahead.
Did you catch that? Sorry, somebody was calling me.
No worries. We lost you at whoever signed up for the Gov delivery and then category, but then we were hanging on tight.
So we used to have Lyris listservs. Now we use Gov delivery system and they don't call them email lists. But anyway, if you're signed up for the general council email list, you'll get the announcements for the meetings, the agendas, and all that jazz. But if you have trouble finding that, or if you want the information and don't want to sign up for that list, just reach out to me directly. But thank you.
Are the Lyris lists getting ported over to the new system?
Yeah, that system has been in place for so almost 6 months now. So they all went over there. It's just the sign up process is different, and we have a lot less flexibility. Like I can't just forward something like I used to a Lyris list. Now I got to kind of log into this other system and create a whole standardized template that shoots out the information, and attaching things is difficult. So there's a few constraints, but other than that, it's been pretty smooth on the transition.
Yeah, I didn't even notice. So on our end, it's smooth. Sounds like it's not so easy for you. Okay, well, that sounds like it'll be an interesting meeting with fish monitoring and microplastics.
I'd just like to add about the council as well, that if anybody is interested in joining the equity working group, please let us know. It's open to everybody. And I think we have some good presentations planned for upcoming meetings. So we'd love to have everybody participate who would like to.
Great, thanks, Peter. Okay, CABW.
Yeah, so shout out to our swamp bioassessment program. They put on the California Aquatic Bioassessment Working Group meeting in partnership with the California chapter of the Society for Freshwater Science, or of Fresh, I can never remember, CalSFS. And that will be November 6th and 7th in Costa Mesa. Also at Squirp. There's a link to the website there, and if you want to attend in person, you have to register, but attending virtually, you're just going to jump on the link. So agendas and things like that will be posted at that website coming soon.
Great. And then there's some San Francisco Bay items. It's a busy time for fish contamination related work in the Bay for now and going through the next couple years. First, I want to mention the Bay RMP is on 2024 is a year for the 5-year cycle of monitoring in the Bay. So we'll be doing our big monitoring effort next year, and the planning process for that monitoring will be starting soon. So anybody who's got an interest in Bay sport fish monitoring is welcome to join in on that. Let me know if you want to be part of that. If you've been a part in the past, then I've got you on our list already. But if you haven't been to one of these planning meetings before, then let me know and I can add you to the list. And then last week we had our annual meeting for the whole program, but there was a session at the meeting on PFAS and a talk on PFAS and Bay fish. It was very similar to the talk that Miguel Mendez gave to the stew at the last meeting, but a little updated. So if you're interested in that talk, it's recorded, and the PowerPoint's available on the RNP annual meeting webpage, in addition to the other talks on PFAS and other bay water quality topics. Another project that's starting to really get going here is an effort to develop a consumption survey questionnaire to use in the Bay. The concept is that this questionnaire will develop this questionnaire. SFEI is working with Region 2 on this. And then community organizations can use the questionnaire to do surveys to try to characterize subsistence fishing consumption rates and practices. We're really getting started with this with a workshop on November 3rd with community-based organizations, trying to get their input on a first draft of the questionnaire. So the project will have the project timeline is for the questionnaire to be completed by next May, and then we'll see about next steps and getting the communities actually going using the questionnaire. That part's not funded yet, but hopefully that will be. And then another interesting project from the Bay that's happening now is a project led by All Positives Possible, a community-based organization out of Vallejo representing the Black community. And they've obtained funding from EPA for a multifaceted project, but one part of it is to get a better understanding of fish contamination in the areas that they're really interested in, and for the species that they're interested in. I'm showing the locations in the Carquinez Strait in the map on the upper right. So pretty dense sampling effort for this region, but we'll be able to hit the fishing spots that are their most popular fishing spots, and where a lot of subsistence fishing is happening. We'll be measuring mercury, PCBs, and PFAS, so we'll be getting a nice data set and a nice expansion of the PFAS data set. The sampling's been going on in September and is still going on. There's two parts. There's a part where we hired a contractor like we usually do with Moss Landing, but Moss Landing wasn't available. So we found another contractor, and they've used their boat-based sampling to collect in this area. And we've gotten we had a longer list of target species as usual, but what we ended up really getting good samples, good numbers of, are striped bass and staghorn sculpin, which is a good combination. The striped bass are very popular for consumption, and then the staghorn sculpin are also consumed, but a good indicator. They're benthic species with good site fidelity, so they'll be a good indicator for organics. And PFAS, they've shown tendency to accumulate relatively high levels of PFAS. So that's the contractor part. And then another part of this that I'm excited about is that we're going to be analyzing fish that the community is catching, and so that's underway. We did a training with community members in early September, and showing them how to collect samples and avoid extraneous sources of contamination. So we've got that sorted out, and that sampling is underway and continuing. So pretty excited about that part of it, which I'm not aware that that's been done before. So if anybody's heard of a project where that has been done, let me know. But I think we're breaking new ground there. Okay. Any other updates from the group? Anything in the chat, Anna?
I'm not seeing anything. Nope.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to item 3, which is an update on the 2023 sampling. So this was panel 5 of the Bass Lakes, the thrilling conclusion of the long-term cycle of the Bass Lakes monitoring. So again, this is the end of the season. It's a good time for a recap of how it went and thinking about whether there are any lessons learned for future sampling. So a reminder that we've documented things in the updated monitoring plan for this round of the Bass Lake monitoring. And the priorities were to complete panel 5, and in spite of budgetary challenges, our priority with the limited budget is to remain consistent with panels 1 through 4 and complete this long-term effort. And then our plan was where budget allows to also include OER add-ons, and then sample a list of other reservoirs that were requested by the regions. So we did include OER add-ons. There's OER provided detailed input that I'm not going to show, but based on almost every reservoir on it, specific information needs that they had. So we did include those. And then we were able to sample most of the water bodies that were requested as add-ons. So a little more detail on that, reminder of what the requests were. Kerry Austin had a couple of requests from Region 2 related to oxygenation studies, but Lake Hodges we did sample. And then San Pablo, she retracted her request because of a delay in construction of the oxygenation system.
Jay, this is Autumn. We were able to get that, and we worked with, oh gosh, I can't remember her replacement's name. Billy, do you remember? Or Jay?
Gerardo?
Anyway, we worked with him and we were able to sample San Pablo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. And then Heather Boyd had a few requests, and we were able to sample those. They're listed here. They were on the last slide as well. And then further down the list, Jeff Gerasi had some requests, but we weren't able to get that far down the list. But we were able to do quite a few of the additional requests and all the OER add-ons. So thanks, Autumn, for your wizardry with the budget and figuring all that out and fitting all these things in and keeping track of them. So I want to have a discussion about how the sampling went, and I want to just show this slide, and then I want to show the detailed report on what was collected, and then open it up for Moss Landing to say more about how things went out there. So overall, we were able to sample 35 lakes. Region 9 is sampling Lake Hodges in addition, 1,700 fish, and we'll hear more from Billy Jekyll about how things went out there. But I wanted to review the catch summary that again, Moss Landing did a great job of keeping the group updated on what was happening out there. And so this is the final summary of all the fish that were collected. And I think it's worth going through this in a bit of detail today. So a lot of great work by Billy and the team out there. And they did a great job of hitting the targets in general that we laid out for them. So we've got a nice record of what was requested and what they were able to get. And some of these, so just first starting with the water body list, some of these were taken off and crossed out because they were sampled recently or for other reasons. We have the documentation of all that, although it's not showing up in this table. The sampling dates are shown. For black bass, this is the long-term bass lake monitoring, so that's our primary focus, to characterize mercury contamination across all these 35 lakes. And overall, they did a great job of getting the target number of species. Our basic design is for each location that's sampled to get 14 species across a size range, and that allows us to do the length adjustment. So wherever you see 14s or multiples of 14, they got the full target number. Sometimes it's 28, sometimes it's 56, depending on the size of the lake. As lakes get larger, we include more locations. Most lakes are in the small category where one location is considered representative. But overall, a great job of getting the target numbers. Some minor exceptions. Calabasas, for example, we only got 12 instead of 14, but that's still a pretty good basis for doing the regression that we need to do. And then, in some cases we didn't get the full number, but they do a great job of documenting what went down at each of the sampling locations. So the cruise report will explain, where we didn't get the target, why that was the case. For a few lakes, we wanted to get bottom feeders for organics, and so you can see those where we got carp, catfish, and other species. But that's why there's only a few water bodies where we have those. But that was the plan. We don't do organics everywhere to save our monitoring dollars. Some lakes we get trout. Sometimes there are no bass and we only get trout, like Lake Gregory. Sometimes we get trout and bass. Glen Helen Regional Park was another trout lake. So those are the sport fish, and then prey fish. We try to get 3 species in a sample of 10. We composite the 10 fish into one sample for each of 3 species is our target design. And then if there are more locations, we do that for each location. So like at Lake Mendocino, there were 2 locations, so the numbers are doubled. But again, the team did a great job and was able to get the target numbers at a lot of locations. Sometimes they couldn't get 3 species, but they were able to get 2. But all in all, a great haul of the prey fish as well. Great job, Billy, and your crew. Do you have any good fish stories for us? Or I'd also like to get your sort of recap on how it went, any lessons to carry over into future monitoring this year. We're going through wild extremes lately. This was after a very wet year.
Yeah, it was
drought.
thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. It was but as this picture shows, it snowed on us a couple times and a lot of rain. So we had some difficulty getting into spots just because of roads were washed out and or still muddy. It stayed wet for a long period of time after the season. So it was a little difficult. But overall, it went really well. We didn't have any major boat failures or No injuries to people, which was always good. But yeah, it was nice. We started early this year, so we were able to shock most of our sites, which was very helpful in getting the target species and the size range. But I wanted to thank Chad Laughlin for sampling Hodges. I know that's a difficult lake, and to hook and line that. Big props to him for doing that. I appreciate that. We all appreciated that. We did have some issues with access. Seems like nowadays the lawyers get involved in a lot of the access, and it kind of makes it difficult. We had the Department of Water and Power were very difficult to get access into say Hawaii. We had to have a shore contact or a spotter. So someone had to just sit on the shore when they went in to sample. So there was some little difficulties there and there, but we were able to get it done. And I just want to thank my crew, Scott and Gary and Chris and Getzel still around. They do an amazing job in April collecting, and it's a lot of work and many weeks out. So mostly want to thank their families for letting them do those long days and long weeks. So really appreciate those guys.
Yeah, especially Gary, who was supposed to have retired quite a while ago.
Pseudo retired. Yeah, he's still running strong.
Can you say more about the shocking? That's a big change recently, where there are restrictions on when you can shock. And did that, we started early to deal with that. Was that an issue?
It's so with this last winter event, it seemed like the water temperatures were still cold, and the conductivity was still low. So that it put us in the parameters of our permits. So that made it a little easier to shock. When we have those really dry seasons, the water temperature doesn't really it just heats up so fast, and then the conductivity is higher in these lakes, and it tends to make it so that we have to jump to a different method. So I think it really just is based on our winter and when we can start getting out there. So it definitely helped to have that big winter. It was kind of a mixed bag with that, but it definitely helped us shock more often. So later on in the season, like with Region 8's sites, all the regional parks and things like that, we had to use gill nets and beach seines and cast nets for the prey. So it's a little more time intensive and it's less selective. So you have a lot more trouble finding those size ranges. But yeah, overall it went really well. It was our boats stay together. That's the one thing. It's really difficult just to keep the gear running. You basically have a little computer on a boat in the water, so it's a tough one.
So how many water bodies did you have to go to other sampling gear?
You mean outside of Stu? Or
no, for our list.
Yeah.
How many were impacted by the conductivity limits?
It wasn't. I think it was honestly think it was very similar to last year. We had maybe 10, or I would say roughly 10 or 11 sites that we couldn't shock. Some of it was we just couldn't get a boat in. So like Calabasas, for instance, there's the access into the property, or it's a homeowners association that runs that whole area, And to get access to the lake with a boat and a truck, you have to go through these gates, and there's some trees that make it really difficult to get in. So we actually had to beach seine all of that. And Gary and Scott were down there pulling a beach seine. I don't know how many they did, but it was a lot. And they did cast nets and things like that. So sometimes it's just, you just don't have boat access, or road, the road down to it isn't the greatest, so you can't really get to the water. So like San Juan Pond, we tried to get to that site, and actually ended up getting stuck in the sand, and had to call a tow truck and dig it out, and they pulled us out. So it was really difficult to even get to the water.
So when you're doing the beach seining and other methods, are we still able to get the black bass?
Surprisingly enough, yeah, they in some of these water bodies, the bass kind of stay in one area, and so we can kind of work if we have prior knowledge of Calabasas, for instance, so we know where the fish are, where they hang out, and so we were able to just kind of target those zones and beach seine through. And you after you've gone through the section, it kind of churns up the water a little bit, and so fish will come back in to kind of pick through whatever is stirred up, and so then you come back again, and then you might end up finding some more. And so it's not the greatest method. It's not as selective as like the shock boat. It's a lot easier with the shock boat.
Yeah, Autumn.
Yeah, I just wanted, Billy, I don't remember having any discussions with you specifically about it, but with all of the extra water, especially after the last few dry years, did you have problems with habitat and, no accessible habitat around the margins where we would normally fish?
Yes. Yeah. That was difficult. Good point. Yeah. With that increased water level, a lot of the structure that we would normally be able to reach with the shock boat was no longer available. It was too deep, or we weren't in those areas. And so this is all new structure that hadn't been hydrated in years. So now it was very difficult to kind of find spots in reservoirs that we normally would fish. Oh, right here would be where we would find bass, and now it was completely, it was underwater so much that we couldn't touch it, because the boat will only go down a certain depth depending on your conductivity.
After a dry year, would how many more sites would you guess that we would have to use the alternative methods?
Ooh, it's regional. I'm not sure. It depends on where we are. Southern California is early season, so we want to be down there as early as possible. You end up restricted by permit or timing or index period, and so we try and get the Southern California sites out of the way. If you see all our dates on the sampling times, a lot of the Southern California stuff was early, and then the regional Region 8 and Region and I think it was San Pablo. No, Region 8's regional park stuff. We had a permit in, but it was delayed getting out to us, and so when we finally got the permit back on that, we were able to jump down there, and it was still later in the season, so that kind of stopped us from shocking. It's just really it's tough, because a site or lake that we normally would shock, we get depending on the conditions and the timing, we could get there and we wouldn't be able to. Some of them we were shocked that it actually, the conductivity and the temperature was good, and we're like, I can't believe it's had a couple of cold snaps in the weather and the lake cooled down and we were able to shock.
Mm-hmm. So presumably this is affecting the amount of time and cost for you guys to be out there, or I'm sure
Yes.
Autumn's building that into the future projections. But
It definitely changes.
another reason that things are getting more expensive. Do you think we went out early enough? We started at the beginning of April. Was that a good time?
Yeah, I think if we start any earlier, we won't see the prey fish. I
Mm.
think we'll start losing the prey fish, and then some of the other, the bass come up to the shallows around May when they start to, so they'll be in the shallows, and that's more accessible for us. So I think if we start too early, they're just going to be deep and they're not accessible. So it's a balance there.
Mhm. Any other questions from the group on the field effort this year? I just want to acknowledge and appreciate the knowledge that you guys have, knowing all these water bodies and like where the fishing spots are across the entire state. You guys have been doing this for so long, particularly Gary, like going back to the 70s, I think.
Yeah.
So you're a tremendous resource for our program. Yes.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right. So there's one more slide. And Autumn, you can do this off the top of your head. I just warned you 10 minutes before the meeting, but
Yeah. Well, and I edited it in our working slides, and yeah, whatever. So so things have actually gone really well because we started so early. We got a nice good jump on doing dissections. So the only two lakes that haven't been dissected and analysis started are San Pablo and Lake Hodges. So we have created 177 of the 184 anticipated composites, and we're pretty excited about that. We've also done 653 of 681 individuals. There may be a little bit more than that because I don't remember if the Lake Hodges water body was going to follow previous work that Carrie had done with them, which was 20 individuals instead of 14. So we'll see. And it also depends on, of course, what Chad can get to an hook and line. And then we've already reported 348 mercury results for that, which is exciting because usually it's like December before we're reporting things. So there are a total of 813-ish. Again, that depends on what we get from Lake Hodges, but and then we haven't reported any selenium yet, but I've been out for about a month and there's some sitting in my inbox. And there's a total of 185 anticipated this year. So that's really exciting. After the San Pablo dissections are completed, which actually should be this week, maybe early next week, I'm hoping to get a list of the organics out, and then Sean Campbell at SGS Access can work on the import information that he needs, and I'm hoping to get those shipped prior to the US Thanksgiving. So, and that is fantastic. Last year, we didn't get them out until like February or something. And there's always some give and take going across the border, but I think we've got it down to where we can get this done fairly easily. So I'm really excited about all of that. And it sets us up really good to focus on what we need to do for next year. And I think we're in a really good place.
awesome. Thanks, Autumn. That's a fantastic update, considering I warned you 10 minutes before the meeting. But you're always on it anyway, so I knew you could do it. All right, so that's the end of that item. Does anybody have any questions about 2023? Autumn set us up for a nice segue to next season. Yes, Harry.
Not any question, but just kudos to the sampling team because it's pretty impressive work and getting samples collected and prepped and analyses underway. So it sounds really good.
Agreed. Thanks, Harry. All right, so on to 2024. And in this item, we had an agenda item on this at the last meeting. I'm going to go quickly over a lot of the same slides just to refresh your memory. We're going to be doing round 2 of coast monitoring. Round 1 was in 2009 and 2010. Yeah, I'm going to just go through these really quickly because I presented them last time. We've got what we're doing in this round documented in a sampling plan that was updated in 2018. We originally thought we were going to do this in 3 years, but budgets and other factors got in the way of that. So we've been spreading it over the years, and we're going to be completing it next year. Part 1 was the Southern California bite, and there's been some nice reporting on that, led by Aaron McLaughlin from SQUIRP. We did few samples in a few zones in 2019. And then in 2020, we did a few more in Central and North Coast. This is all documented in cruise reports. And so part 4 is where we're at now. Next year, we'll be wrapping it up. Thrilling conclusion. So we talked about the plan in July, put a request out for feedback on the plan and any requests that folks have, as we usually do. And we got some nice feedback from the Department of Public Health, but no other requests. So this is our last call for requests. We want to etch the plan in stone so that we can apply for the collection permit and just check this off. But I'm going to spend a little time talking about the DPH feedback. So the zones that we're going to sample in 2024 are shown here. I showed this at the last meeting. And this will complete the effort for this round 2 of the coast. Focused on the North Coast and some Central Coast. Following our usual approach, where to save money, we sort of limit the number of organics analyses, but we do mercury on everything. And on the coast, we've got some key indicator species that we use. It's kind of similar to the largemouth bass or black bass in freshwater, like gopher rockfish is a good indicator on the coast. So we have our indicator species on the coast where we look at individuals, but then look at composites for others. Collecting 5 species per zone, and we look at 2 of the species for PCBs. We look at selenium and composites of everything, and then we archive so that we can analyze for other things. So I'm showing just a portion of a big table where we've got our lists of target species, and we got targets for the North, Central, and South Coast, and we've got targets for the different habitats. We've got the sort of outer coast and then bays and harbors. And then we've also got long lists of secondary species. So I'm going to mention the some candidates for addition to the list of secondary species, but just kind of reminding everybody about the overall design. And then you know, the analytes that we're looking at, I went through in the last slide. So we got, as I mentioned, we got some good feedback from DPH, and had a meeting with them to talk about this input and some other input, but they had some requests, and I'm not sure if anybody else from DPH joined. Kelly, are you the DPH rep today?
I'm here along with Swen, who
Okay, great.
speak about fish.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah, so we've been kind of sorting out the requests for additional species, and it would be nice if you could provide some background, Swen, on where the requests came from. I remember that it's from, you know, it's related to the biomonitoring program, but you could describe that, and then we'll you know, go kind of quickly through the list and
Yeah, sure. Thanks,
talk
Jay.
about
And Kelly will be talking more about the biomonitoring study where this information came from, but we did 2 community studies, the Asian Pacific Islander Community Exposure Study, and with Chinese Americans in San Francisco and Vietnamese Americans in San Jose, 100 each in those 2 studies. And we did ask quite a lot of questions about fish consumption, including, you know, species that people were eating and how often, and, you know, and fish parts and things like that. And Kelly will be talking more about that. But these are some of the species that came up where we couldn't find, you know, local advisories for. And so we were wondering just about their, you know, how frequently they're caught, and, you know, whether or not they're in other advisories, and what, you know, whether or not they could be targeted, since they are maybe not as commonly eaten by, you know, fishing populations in general, but more, you know, in these communities.
Great. So Zuyan and her team presented this list to us, and some information that they were able to pull together. Sometimes it's not totally clear what the people were referring to in terms of species. But I reviewed the list and compared it to what's on our target lists already. And one of the sources of information that we used to develop our target list is RecFin. We looked at the catch data from that source to help identify the primary targets and secondary targets. So I looked back at the RecFin information that we had, and that information's in that 2018 monitoring plan document. So I looked at what information we had, and then turned it over to Billy and to get input from Moss Landing, and you know, what they know, and with, you know, their extensive knowledge about fish across the state. So just quickly going through the list, cobia, it wasn't totally clear which species they were referring to. There's one possibility that's more of an East Coast species, but it might be California corbina. So the question here is, if it is California corbina, that's not on our list currently, we could, but they're found primarily based on Billy's information in Southern California, so we could add them to the secondary list for Southern California, but they catch them with beach chains, and my memory's fuzzy on whether we are routinely doing beach chains, so I don't know if there's an added cost for transferring. You know, I don't know if beach chaining is part of our standard approach currently.
We typically don't beach seine for this project. We have in other projects.
Right. So if we were to, I mean, that would make it more expensive if we were to add them, like I mean, if they were a primary target, we would really try to get them with, and you do the beach shining. If they're on the secondary target list, then we're not necessarily, going out of our way to get them. Do you think we might get any with our other methods, Billy? If they're in secondary target?
Yeah, I mean, we do occasionally catch them in, when we're hook and lining, if we're near a pier or something. They like the sandy habitat and they're kind of more near shore. All the other species we're kind of looking for rocky habitat or more kind of a deeper water scenario. So we typically don't focus really close to shore.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like it wouldn't be, it wouldn't really be added cost if we added them as a secondary target, and we might get some by hook and line.
Yeah, I think my recommendation for, it looks like there's a couple of questions on adding species to the secondary target list. Let's add them and add them to the permits. And if we catch them, great. If we don't, that happens to other species too. I think that's my like blanket recommendation for those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that back for the first study, there were regions that wanted us specifically to target surf perch and things in their areas. And we did have a line item where they could add that in, but there was an additional cost. But it was the regions that paid for that, specifically Region 4. Because Michael Lyons always loved to add on things. He was really interested in the bioaccumulation. So that is the kind of thing that we have accommodated in the past. But again, we would need the regional cooperation.
Right. Zulian, do you know from the information you gathered, like, is this like a small number of people that mentioned this, or was it a bigger?
It was not a large number of people, no.
Okay.
It was just one of, a few species that we couldn't really find advisories for, so we noted along with the others.
Okay, well, like Anna was saying, I think we can add them to the secondary target list, and I think it is especially relevant for Southern California and I'm mainly thinking we capture this for the next time we go and sample down there.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
So grouper was another species that came up, and we think this is referring to Boccaccio, and that was popular in RecFin, but didn't quite make our list, but we can add them to the list as well. Billy added some information about it here. Mackerel was already on our set. They're a big species in Southern California. We've collected a lot of samples for mackerel, and they were already on our secondary list for Central and Northern California. So I think we're good there. This Pacific saury, it's not in NorCal, or very rare in NorCal, occasionally in SoCal. Sea bass. Billy told me what he thought this was, and I didn't add it into the table yet, but I think we should add this because Billy said that they are present in some years. So
I think he said white bass.
Yeah.
White sea bass.
Yeah. So I think we should add them to the list in case they are present, I guess, as a secondary target. And then tilapia, Moss Landing hasn't been seeing them in our bays. So we do sample them in some freshwater environments. We have in the past, but we're not seeing them in the bays. So not adding those. So this is a proposed decision. So basically adding the Corbina, Boccaccio, and white sea bass to the secondary list for Southern California, Northern California. Yes, Chad.
Sea bass might also be queenfish as a misidentification, but I don't know if that's already on the list or not.
Oh, what? Sorry, what? Queenfish, you said?
Queenfish, yeah.
Okay.
We've definitely caught those in the past in the southern regions, but I don't recall off the top of my head if we found them in Central or Northern California.
During the break, I'll look that up.
And yeah, I think the minimum size limit for white sea bass is something like 28 or 30 inches.
Jay, I can look it up.
Okay. Yeah, I also want to look at the monitoring plan to see if they're on our target list. Yeah, Wes?
Yeah, I have a comment about the Boccaccio. You know, in Billy's note, he said they're greater than 200 feet. And in our sampling and analysis plan, we only go up to 200 feet depth. So based on what Billy found, it might be that you only find young or small fish in the areas that we're looking at. So I don't know what the sizes are for that, or, you know, based on where their main habitat is, if it's really going to be something worth adding, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were, from what I was looking at, they were mainly found, the larger individuals were found deeper, and shallow water catch were smaller. And I think it's 10 inches is legal.
So would the ones that are near shore be less than 10 inches?
Most likely.
Yeah, all right.
The depth range that I saw was 160 feet to I don't remember, but greater than 200. So you're only getting an extra 40 feet in there.
Right. We try and get close to that.
I just want to do a quick time check and make sure y'all get a break in a couple minutes. So we'll go with Wes and then Jennifer and then Harry, and then I'm going to peer pressure Jay into wrapping this item up.
My comment is quick. Thanks, Autumn. It's just that we have queenfish in the coastal advisory if they are actually a species of interest. So
Great. Jennifer?
We've only found them in 8 and 9.
Thanks, Jennifer. And Harry?
Well, there's always the question about what ocean temperatures will be like in 2024. So it sounds like you got all the contingencies considered, but I wondered if next year there might be warmer ocean temperatures and fish distribution might be affected. So just a thought.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. If Billy, if you are seeing a shift in species, it seems like maybe we could use the SoCal secondary target list.
Yeah, I mean, we zebra perch was one that we found off of Pajaro, the Region 3 area, and it was definitely, you don't typically see them there, and we collected samples of them. So
yeah, so that's something to, I think you would do this anyway, but keep an eye on that. And if you are seeing, sampleable numbers of southern species, then we might want to keep them.
Okay.
All right, so we'll follow up and look at the size information and follow up on some of these remaining questions, but I think we're pretty much in the, sounds like Boccaccio will probably be excluded, but I think we've got it pretty well sorted out. But I thought it was good to spend a little time on this to sort of highlight this good input that we got from DPH, and is a good example of, we always try to respond to requests for more species or more locations, and doing a little dive into some of these species I thought was good. So okay, so next steps. I'm not really, you guys have had plenty of time to comment, so I'm not really expecting more, but this is the last call. Maybe we jogged some thoughts today. But last comments due October 31st, and then we're going to finalize and post the monitoring plan. We'll document the small changes that we're going to be implementing this year to the species list. We'll apply for the permit, and I'm actually not sure. Maybe you guys started that process already. Have you been waiting to start that, Billy and Autumn?
We've begun the process, but not too far into it.
Okay, so if we want to make these minor tweaks to the list and add a couple species, we can do that.
Yeah, we should be able to.
All right. Okay, and then next year, as usual, kickoff meeting early in the year, and start sampling in April or May, and then the report on this will be wrapped up with the entire coast data set in 2025. Harry.
I assume that's February, March 2024.
Good point. Yes, thank you. All right. We went a little over. So Anna, do you want to still start at 10:50?
Yeah, we've got some guest speakers, so I want to respect their time and everyone else's time that wants to tune in then. So take a quick break, come back at 10:50, and we will dive back in. Thanks, y'all.
Sounds good. See you in a few.
All right. Welcome back. I hope y'all had a nice break. I am so excited to introduce Kelly from Biomonitoring California. I think we connected last year or earlier this year, and have been kind of having lots of offline conversations about how the Bioaccumulation Monitoring Program and Safety Workgroup can partner with Biomonitoring California. If you don't know what that is, Kelly's going to tell you all about it. To kind of close the loop on bioaccumulation and to increase our partnership. So with that, Kelly, I'm going to stop sharing, and you should be able to share screen, but if not, let me know and I can troubleshoot. Got it. Take it away.
Okay, is it up on the screen?
Yeah, looks good.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks so much, Anna and Jay, for the invitation to come speak at this group. It's been lovely getting to know you all better this year, and I'm excited for our groups to continue collaborating. As Anna mentioned, my name is Kelly Chen, and I'm a research scientist at the Biomonitoring California program at California Department of Public Health. So the human biomonitoring world that runs parallel to the fish biomonitoring world. And today I'll be sharing some updates on our study among Asian Pacific Islanders in the San Francisco Bay Area, and our current work around PFAS exposures and fish consumption. I also want to acknowledge my team members, Swen Norissa Wu and Kathleen Atfield, who have been instrumental in the study and are also here in this meeting. So as an overview, first, I'll talk about the background of the project, then I'll dive into PFAS and fish consumption results before bringing us towards some context around PFAS accumulation within fish and fish consumption advisories, and lastly, next steps in our group. And we hope to have some time for Q&A at the end too. All right, so the Asian Pacific Islanders Community Exposures Project, or ACE, was a community-based study to biomonitor Asian populations in the San Francisco Bay Area. It grew out of prior studies, both within Biomonitoring California and national data, which suggested that the API community appears to have higher levels of certain chemicals, including PFASs and metals, compared to other ethnic racial groups. Our branch has also had a long history of working on safer fish consumption messaging with local API advocacy groups, including APA Family Services in San Francisco. And during the course of that work, APA expressed interest in biomonitoring as a means to demonstrate potential impacts of dietary choices on chemical exposures. So that was the basis for the ACE project. And the first phase, ACE-1, focused on the Chinese community in San Francisco, recruiting 100 participants. And the second phase, ACE-2, on the Vietnamese community in San Jose. And each phase ran from 2016 to 2017. Both phases of ACE biomonitored participants for chemicals measured in blood and or urine. So for 4 metals, including arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury, and a panel of 32 PFASs. Participants also completed an extensive exposure questionnaire ranging from demographics to diet, to occupation, to the use of personal care products. And just as an overview, the study concluded in 2017, and since then, our group has reported back individual level results to participants and shared results on metals, demographics, and earlier analyses on PFASs in a variety of settings. So some of you may have encountered this work already. But today's presentation will focus on our current and recent work around PFAS and diet, particularly around fish and shellfish consumption. So just to give you a sense of our study population, ACE-1 and 2 both recruited 100 participants, but a few were unable to provide blood samples, bringing the total down to 195. And the mean age of both were similarly in the mid-40s and just under 50% male. Household income was slightly higher among our ACE-1 population, but the median fell well below the region's median income in both cases. Most of our participants were born outside the US, with a mean of 51% of their life spent in the US for ACE-1 and 36% for ACE-2. And ACE-2 skewed more heavily towards recent non-English speaking immigrants than ACE-1. And in earlier analyses, we found that these factors were all associated with PFAS levels: age, sex, income, and education, as well as acculturation factors like birth country and home language and portion of life spent in the US. So now moving on to the ACE profile, the PFASs that we found included top 5 PFASs detected in more than 98% of participants. Here I'm showing geometric means broken out by each ACE group, with ACE-1 in the darker blue and ACE-2 in the lighter blue. For both groups, the general trend was pretty similar, except for those 2 PFASs marked by red asterisks. PFH excess and PFO were a bit higher among the Vietnamese group, so ACE-2. I've added in national data in yellow here to compare with the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, including all adults and also specifically NHANES Asian adults for PFAS data from 2015 to 2016. And you can see that the blue bars from ACE tend to run a bit higher than yellow bars, the national data. Specifically, 3 of the top 5 detected PFASs were higher in ACEs than both set of results from national data. This was for PFOS, PFUDA, and PFNA. As another piece of context for PFAS levels measured among our ACE study group, we considered risk-based guidelines that were issued by the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine in 2022. They used a sum of 7 PFASs to form guidelines in a clinical setting with less than 2 nanograms per milliliter measured in serum, indicating no adverse health effects expected, 2 to 20 with potential for adverse health effects, and greater than 20 the bottom tier, indicating adverse health effects expected. So in this table, we show proportions for ACE compared to the same national data set and Haynes. Those estimates are shown on the far right. And we can see that ACE participants have a disproportionately higher risk of adverse health effects, with 20 to 25% falling into that high risk level, which is more than double the national level at 9%. So with these comparisons in mind, the ACE population clearly is vulnerable to elevated PFAS exposures, and our group has been very interested in identifying exposure routes that may be associated with PFAS levels, which may be able to inform our materials and messaging going forward. And this brings us to PFAS and fish consumption, which I'm sure many of you know a lot about already, but this is just a helpful diagram from a study that came out earlier this year examining PFAS profiles in US fish. And Barbo et al. Combined data from several national data sets, the EPA National Rivers and Streams Assessment from 2013 to 14, and the Great Lakes Human Health Fish Fillet Tissue Study in 2015 to examine PFAS levels in freshwater fish samples. And you can see in the yellow that PFAS really is the main driver across all these samples at 74%, followed by several other PFASs in much smaller proportions, including PFUNDA, PFDA, PFDOA, PFNA, and PFOSA. And it's appearing that PFAS accumulation in fish tends to happen at those PFASs where there are 8+ fluorinated carbons, such as PFAS and PFNA. And this is relevant to the ACE project, as we know that Asian American populations are high consumers of fish due to cultural and dietary preferences. So as Wen mentioned earlier, we have an extensive exposure questionnaire that we collected during the ACE project with many questions about diet, including questions around fish and shellfish consumption. So I'll be sharing response data next around bought and caught fish, shellfish, and fish parts consumption, which we've shared with OEHA and SFEI before. So starting with fish, participants reported a wide array of fish consumed, 47 unique species bought in stores, and 14 unique species caught by themselves or friends and family. This data was the basis for some of the recommendations that Jay mentioned earlier, and some of these species, as Jay mentioned, are colloquial names that we've done our best to try to categorize, but all your input today, I think, will also help us refine some of the naming and categorization. And I won't try to read all these fish out, but I'm happy to return to this slide for a later look. Shellfish were primarily bought among participants. They reported 10 unique shellfish species. And in terms of frequency of consumption, among participants who ate caught fish, most reported eating caught fish once or more per month at 50%, 56% of participants. However, few were actually very frequent consumers of caught fish. 2 participants reported eating caught fish 15 or 16 times per month, which would be pretty much once every 2 days. And overall seafood consumption, defined as fish and shellfish together, was also higher than a national survey. 59% of ACE participants reported eating seafood at least twice a week, compared to 20% of all adults and 41% of non-Hispanic Asian adults. We also extrapolated the fish habitat of those reported species, as freshwater fish tend to generally have higher PFAS levels compared to marine fish, and OEHA's fish advisories are also broken down into habitat. And we found that among both caught fish and bought fish, most fish consumed were migratory at 60 to 36%, followed by freshwater fish, then marine. And we also had data on fish parts consumption. This was a question we added in during the second phase. So we only have responses from ACE2 or the Vietnamese American participants. And we asked questions about consumption of fish eyes, head, organs, and skin. And we see that only a small minority of ACE participants never eat any of these parts, ranging from 10% to 29% across these fish parts. And this is of concern because fish advisories are often based on fillet samples of fish and often recommend simply not eating the non-fillet parts of fish, but that's really not what we're seeing among this population. And several studies do show that there may be higher concerning levels in non-fillet samples in areas of the fish, such as fish spleen and gut, compared to the fillet. And recently, the EPA has been developing some communication to convey fish parts that should and should not be eaten if they are contaminated. And before making that messaging publicly available, they've been pre-testing in focus groups, and last week shared some really interesting data from these focus groups. So I obtained permission to share them in this setting because they were pretty eye-opening. And so very briefly, they recruited participants from Arabic, Chinese, English, Russian, Spanish, Tagalog, and Vietnamese speaking participants. And the participants were asked to indicate which parts of the fish that they eat. The options were fins, bones, organs, tail, head, skin, fish eggs, fat, fish steak, and fillet. And you can see that many cultures are eating organs, head, skin, and fat, as well as the fish steak and fillet. And those parts, again, are the parts that tend to accumulate higher levels of contaminants. And then they asked an interesting follow-up question. Which parts of fish do participants think are actually safe to eat? And again, many cultures think that it's safe to eat organs, but all actually thought it was okay to eat the head, fat, and skin. So in the last part of this talk, I'll be linking the ACE project to some wider context around PFASs and fish consumption that our group has been learning about. And in particular, our group has been very interested to learn about PFAS levels seen in Bay Area fish, helpfully reported by the SFRMP, and recommendations offered by fish consumption advisories, both in California and other states, as our group does have an interest in education and outreach back to these communities in the future. So as the group might remember from Miguel's presentation, I'm borrowing this from SFRMP. SFVI's regional monitoring program has been sharing great local fish monitoring data, most recently from 2019, and we are very interested because they do offer some insight into PFAS contamination in local fish. And I know this is no longer the most updated data because there were the archive samples, but I think many things didn't change. The same trends were that across all these fish species reported, there was PFAS found across samples. And we also noted that several of the fish tested overlapped with fish reported by ACE participants. These are marked in red arrows, including brown rockfish, striped bass, white croaker, and white sturgeon. And there were also fish caught by participants, but not tested. And some of those species were the ones that we reported back to Jay that he shared earlier. So those included mackerel, salmon, tilapia, among others. And I also checked during the break the SFRMP's annual meeting presentation just to see what the updates were. And I was glad to see that even when including the updated archive samples, the same pattern was true. PFAS really was the main driver of PFAS found in Bay Area fish. That's the large purple bars, and also PFOSA in orange. So these are the longer chained PFASs, and those are the ones that tend to persist in the South Bay. And again, some of these species are reported as caught by participants in the ACE study. Over the course of working on this project and learning more about PFAS in fish, our group has also had several helpful conversations with OEHA's fish program. So we want to acknowledge that they are the experts in doing what is a very complicated job to craft different fish consumption advisories across the state. And as seen on the map, there are advisories issued for specific locations, as well as statewide advisories that are not site-specific for various water body types and broken into a sensitive and general population. But as California does not yet issue fish advisories based on PFAS levels, we look to other states for some context on the PFAS levels seen in the SFRMP sport fish data. So for context, across the US, 16 states at this point have issued fish advisories related to PFAS. 8 states, including California, are monitoring PFAS, but have not yet issued advisories. And using Washington State as an example, as you can see, many of these advisories will recommend a number of meals within a certain time frame, such as a month, based on a certain level of PFAS found in fish. And most states focus on PFAS. As you could see, PFAS tends to be the main driver in fish, but a couple of states offer advisories for other PFASs. And in our conversations with OEHA, we've been learning about how different assumptions come into play, whether that's body weight, fish meal size, frequency of consumption, or background levels of PFAS that make cross comparison between states difficult. One exercise we conducted to better understand PFAS levels in fish found in the SFRMP was to apply other states' PFAS guidance to the levels found in the sport fish samples. So we show here 4 state advisories which have varying recommendations. And starting with largemouth bass, the average PFAS level measured was 9.1 parts per billion, which would lead to recommendations ranging from 1 meal over 2 months from Massachusetts, to 1 meal per month from New Jersey, 2 meals per month from Washington, to 12 from Michigan. And then carried out this exercise for all fish samples in 2019 with PFAS measurements. And we found that nearly all PFAS concentrations in the San Francisco area sport fish samples would actually fall within concentration ranges that would have triggered other states' PFAS advisories. We wanted to compare to OEHA's fish advisories, which are based on mercury and PCBs, and found that there are actually scenarios where fish consumption following OEHA's advisories would exceed the number of meals recommended by other states' PFAS fish consumption advisories. These are the cases in red on the right. So from the last meeting, we found it really encouraging and great to hear that OEHA is looking at incorporating PFAS in its fish consumption advisories, such as through an interim advisory. And we hope that our group's data is helpful in this work. And lastly, we wanted to share ongoing analysis work, which is examining whether there are differences in PFASs between participants who eat self-caught fish versus not, who eat fish from various habitats such as freshwater, migratory, or marine, and who eat different fish parts such as eyes, head, or skin. And looking ahead, we are excited to continue working with our ACE community partners to share this information and looking forward to looping them in, as well as other groups, into the swamp realignment and long-term monitoring priorities assessments efforts next year. And we've continued to think about broader questions and gaps that this work brings up, perhaps not for our group at Biomonitoring California, but for the wider community that thinks about fish, PFASs, and other chemicals. This project, of course, focuses on 2 groups in San Francisco, 2 Asian American groups, but it's clear that there is a need to understand other populations that may be vulnerable to PFAS contamination in fish, and to understand whether specific species of fish and shellfish, parts of these species, and geographical areas have different levels of PFAS so that we can better inform fish consumption. And as always, it has been critical to employ a culturally sensitive and environmental justice focused approach in expanding and conducting further research. our group is always happy to connect, to collaborate, and continue to learn about ways in which we may be of help. We also are learning about fish and have found these meetings and other offline meetings very helpful. So if you have any comments on future analyses that would be helpful from our group, please do share. I can share my email. And lastly, just wanted to say thank you to all the participants and APA Family Support Services, Vivo, and Biomonitoring California staff, especially Swen, Narissa, and Kathleen and Kira, who have contributed to this project. So that's all I have today.
That's all, just like amazing, mind-blowing work. No big deal. Thanks so much, Kelly, for sharing. We have time for a couple of questions. Kelly presented early versions of this to me a while ago, and I've been so excited to see it in this space. And I know it's definitely going to help us inform our conversations next year. Yeah, Wes, go for it.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for the great presentation. It's great to see all that in presentation format. Just had one question that I don't think we've discussed through our offline meetings or in part of this is, do you have any sense of where the participants in both studies are fishing geographically? Is that something that was included in surveys? Or just be curious, as the SFRMP data has shown that the South Bay tends to be one of the more impacted areas.
We didn't have questions asking specifically like which water bodies. So that's why we were interested in habitats, just to give us a clue about whether it might be coastal or in a freshwater body. But we do know they were from the San Francisco and San Jose areas. But as you know, people may travel further for fish.
Okay, yeah, it's just interesting to know. It's a great data set. I think it's very informative. And again, thanks.
Thank you.
Jay?
Yeah, that was an excellent presentation. Thank you. You mentioned you were doing more research, looking at some of the factors that might drive the concentrations. Is that based on the existing data set? And I'm wondering, are there any plans for further PFAS biomonitoring?
I can talk about this existing data set and maybe pass it to one of our team members. But for this existing data set, we are looking at several research questions and have been working towards that and hope to be able to share that in the coming year or next year. Our group at Biomonitoring California has done many other studies outside of the ACE projects, ranging from regional studies across California in the past, and also is planning a long-term effort to examine maternal samples across California. So I can pass it to Kathleen or Narissa if they want to comment a bit more on that.
Sure. Sorry, my video doesn't seem to want to engage, but yeah, as you say, Kelly, we've been studying PFAS in California populations since 2011. So it's been part of our regional exposure studies, most recently in Los Angeles in 2018, Eastern and Southeastern California in 2019, and a rather abbreviated look because of the pandemic in 2020 of San Diego and Orange County. And in pregnant populations and even amongst firefighters. So we've got quite a number of different groups, and we'll be looking forward in Orange County and Fresno in banked pregnancy samples from 2015, 2018, and 2020. And that one is actually going to give us a glimpse into a wider set of PFAS, because as we know, there's substitution efforts that have happened in the industry. So we can't just rely on information of these legacy compounds going forward. But what I will say about this data set is it's the most rich in our exposure questions about fish consumption and dietary consumptions. Our regional studies did have questions, but we also needed to hit exposure scenarios for different types of chemicals, because we don't always just focus on PFAS, of course, but also metals and some other chemical classes. So this one's kind of the most rich for understanding associations with fish consumption.
Great, thank you.
Last call for questions.
I've got another one that you could just give a quick answer. Quick answer would be okay. How did the mercury data look in the ACE populations?
The mercury, sorry, I'm not remembering the specifics quite off the top of my head, but they are also elevated compared to national levels. And one thing we've done in the CARE study actually is we looked at the concordance between mercury and PFAS levels to try and get a hold on whether there would be common sources there. And for the higher molecular weight PFAS, especially PFUDA and PFDA, definitely see a high correlation between mercury and PFAS levels there.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Kelly and Biomonitoring California team of awesomeness for your work in your presentation. Anytime you want to come back and give us another update, we'd love to hear from you. And I'm sure we'll have more offline conversations moving forward.
I'm just going to add, unless someone else has beat me to it, a link to all of our results for PFAS in our various studies in California. So you can peruse that at your leisure.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Thanks. And I'll be sure to add that link into the notes as well. Since we all kind of lose the chat once we hang up. Great. So Kelly mentioned this a little bit about participating in the realignment, and things are happening. So I wanted to provide a quick update on where we are and where we're going. So for those that haven't heard about the Bioaccumulation Monitoring Program Realignment, it's the SWAMP Bioaccumulation Monitoring Program's attempt at really operationalizing equity into our program and exploring what that looks like for us, with three main priorities: building stronger relationships with tribes, tribal government partners, and communities who consume fish and shellfish for subsistence purposes. And Kelly's presentation is a great example of why that's really important. Building stronger relationships amongst ourselves and the water boards, and filling in these really substantial data and information gaps relating to which fish are safer to eat in water bodies, particularly for those who consume fish and shellfish for tribal, cultural, and subsistence purposes. So a single realignment cycle takes about 3 years. The first year is really all about finding the data and information gaps so we can develop a monitoring plan, and then monitor in the second year and begin conversations with the tribal government and community partners about communication needs and how they would like to be communicated with, and how we can ensure that the amazing data and information that we collect with this program through the Safety at Work group is actually used by the communities that are most impacted. And then the third year, we kind of reflect and think about what partnership looks like outside of this formal 3-year process. So we started this process in the San Diego region in 2021, which feels like yesterday and 4 million years ago at the same time. And we've been doing a lot of work. So we've had 6 advisory committee meetings. We have one more scheduled for mid-December to kind of wrap things up. We had teams, Moss Landing and the San Diego Regional Water Board, conducted monitoring according to priorities set forth in the monitoring plan that we kind of co-developed with the advisory committee. And we've also developed a communication and outreach plan with specific tasks, specifically and particularly assigned to SWAMP and the Bioaccumulation Monitoring Program to develop resources to support communication, outreach, and engagement with our program and our products. And there's a draft summary of longer term recommendations, and those are things that we really couldn't address or kind of begin to tackle within this 3-year process, but that I wanted to document honestly for myself so that when we have these longer term conversations, we can bring that in to the conversation and use it to help make informed decisions. This year, we're really focusing on partnership, and the realignment process is a discrete process that's intentional, and I don't want folks to feel like they have to be part of the realignment forever and ever and it's never ending. So we need to think about what partnership looks like outside of that and how folks feel comfortable engaging and what that looks like so that we can kind of wrap more folks into the amazing stew that we've got going on here. Chad Laughlin and I are also working on writing up the data report summarizing the 2022 monitoring. So that's in progress, and I'm sure next year when we've got the organics and everything's all buttoned up, we can share the results of that in this space. Everything's available on our webpage. And this has been, the San Diego realignment has been such an amazing learning experience in terms of developing relationships and identifying needs. And I'm so grateful to the partners on this call, including, Jay and Wes and Chad and so many others that have been engaged and part of the process and part of that learning since the beginning. So we're moving to San Francisco, y'all. There's a lot of great work, as Jay and Biomonitoring California and others have been sharing with us over the past couple of meetings, and the San Francisco region is really looking forward to and already partnering with us to prepare for this process. We've started some tribal engagement and outreach. One of the big lessons that we've learned from San Diego is having a particular advisory committee kind of committing and kind of making the responsibility of communicating for the communities to a select number of individuals is a sticking point. And so next year we're going to host community or advisory workshops and make it open to more folks. So it will still be limited to tribal government representatives and community-based organization representatives, but folks can come when they're available, and we'll we were reworking how we're gonna run the process, but the products and the timelines will still really be the same. We're still figuring out the first meeting date for 2024, but we're working on implementing some phone call interviews with our facilitator to help us figure out the structures and the facilitation ways that we can really get folks excited and engaged to contribute to this process. And it will build on all of the work that the Bay RMP and others have been doing in San Francisco, in the San Francisco region, and particularly building on the work of the San Francisco region's SWAMP program and all of the great work that they're doing in the tribal space and community engagement space. So we're gearing up for that. And we're going to start the process as soon as possible in 2024. So if you are in San Francisco and the San Francisco region and want to be kind of kept in the loop or engaged in this process, please send me an email and I'll start to send out communications when we're ready to get going. We welcome, just as we have this year, we welcome representatives from agencies like the Department of Public Health and OEHA, but we're going to be limiting it to one individual attending per workshop. so that the bulk of the attendees are from tribal governments and community-based organizations. So they really take up the most space and have the floor, because that's who we want to hear from. I will be following up with regional coordinators and tribes who haven't been part of the San Diego realignment and San Francisco realignment later in 2024 and 2025 to start thinking about the next cycle. Any questions on that? I'll probably utilize the council meeting in December to dive a little bit deeper into all of that. But are there any questions now from the group? All right. Last call. Okay, great. So long-term monitoring priorities assessment. We've been kind of talking about this for this past year. And there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes in between these meetings, particularly by our OEMA contracts team, which huge shout out to them for keeping the monies rolling so we can do the monitoring and the analysis. And actually, like, they're the reason this stuff works and we have a program. So, and also Moss Landing, you heard from Billy and Autumn this morning about all of the things that they got to do while in the field and after samples are collected. But there's also a permitting process that we have to go through. And we need to kind of give them what they need earlier than we have been. So we would like to start this, like, thinking longer term earlier so that we can expedite and get everyone what they need so that the monitoring can go smoothly and on time. As you know, historically, or maybe you don't, I don't know what you know. Historically, a lot of our monitoring has been focused on lakes and reservoirs, although, as Jay mentioned earlier, we have been monitoring coastal areas and some river and stream monitoring. And we want to utilize next year to wrap up that coastal survey. Thanks, COVID, for making it take us so long. But we're going to wrap it up and also really starting the planning for the next 10 years and getting our proverbial ducks in a row. Here's just kind of screen grabs of historical monitoring locations that have been in our monitoring plans. And as you know from the conversations earlier, sometimes these are tweaked and sometimes we can't monitor some and we can monitor others and all of that good stuff. But this is just kind of big picture trends of how we've been operating as a program for the last 20 years. Similarly, analytes, this will all make sense in later slides, so just bear with me here. Analytes that we've been prioritizing and monitoring in the kind of different water body types, lakes and reservoirs, coastal areas, and rivers and streams. Big focus on mercury and selenium and PCBs for a multitude of reasons. One being that that's what fish consumption advisories, the data that fish consumption advisories need for OEHA. That wasn't a real sentence, but we're just going to roll with it. Okay. So next year, we want to kind of reflect on where we've been. It's been great, but as we're hearing in recent conversations, needs are changing, priorities are changing, budgets are not, and it's costing more to do less. So I, the program coordinator, I really want to hear from you all so that as the SWAMP program has to make hard decisions, I can include your needs and what you need to run your programs and the needs of our tribal government partners and community-based organizations, wrap that into our decision-making process. And kind of talking through that together is going to take some time. So I'd really like to think about, and these are kind of different potential changes that I've been thinking about, but I want to have longer conversations next year about how we might shift the program to accommodate all of the needs that we have, to center equity, and with our realistic budget constraints. and human constraints. There's only so many Billies in the world. Like, we can't clone him, you know? So for lakes and reservoirs, there's still a need, but maybe we sample different locations or prioritize different analytes. Similarly with coastal areas, there's a lot happening with the BITE program. So continuing that partnership and continuing to reflect where a lot of folks in California collect fish and shellfish. Rivers and streams, however, I'm thinking we pair that with realignment efforts, or if regions can contribute funds to cover the monitoring and analysis, then we can add those into our monitoring, like standard monitoring protocols. It just takes a lot to get out there. It's difficult to gain access. And we're only monitoring every 10 years as it is now. So I really don't want to miss out on those areas, which is why I think they should be centered in the realignment space. We want to continue having the information on monitoring that in our QAPs and monitor it when we can, but it wouldn't be a priority in the same way as coastal areas and lakes would be. Again, these are not decisions I have made. I'm just trying to give you some insight into where my head's at, to light the fire so we can have a more detailed conversation in future meetings. Similarly, with analytes, we've been going hard on mercury and selenium for a lot of good reasons. I feel like we've got good coverage, and from what I'm learning, Jay, feel free, and others to correct me if I'm wrong, the issues with mercury aren't going away. So continuing to monitor mercury in the same species in the same locations where fish advisories already exist, for example, doesn't really give us a great return on investment. However, PFOA and PFAS and microplastics and so many other analytes are emerging, and the science is getting to the place where we might be able to have a greater return on our investment if we prioritize those analytes. So maybe we flip it, where instead of sampling mercury and selenium everywhere like we're doing now, we sample PFOA and PFAS and whatever else as the center, and then we have mercury and selenium by request. Again, I don't know if that works with our budgets. I don't know if that's realistic. This is just stuff I'm thinking of when I'm doing my dishes and in the shower. So here you go, in the garden. And again, for all of the analytes, if this would be, you know, kind of the core priorities given the limited budget and resources that we have as the statewide program. But if regional boards really want us to sample, you know, PBDEs or PCBs or mercury, and they can contribute funds to support that, then we would absolutely accommodate those requests. So next year, and potentially sooner this year, as you'll see in a moment, I really want to get a better understanding of where this community is thinking we should go. How can the SWAMP program and the Safety Work Group center ourselves as a partner and an ally and a resource for the questions and needs that our community is asking and the communities that we serve are facing? More logistically, we need to make a strategic plan and get our contracts in line and permits and things like that. And I'd like to get a pretty clear view of the next 5 years and some decent plans 5 years after that. And particularly as soon as possible, we need to get the permits and things in place for 2025 and ideally 2026. So we've been talking about templates for at least 6 months now. There's a water boards template, and these are links here. So for regional water boards folks, I want to hear about your priorities. And I also really want to make space for tribes and agencies and our other organizational partners like the Bay RMP or the BITE or whoever else. And we're going to have meetings, and I'd like each entity to kind of walk us through their thought process. For the regional boards, in order to be invited to be in that space, I'm requiring that you complete the template. You don't have to give me your whole life story. hit the basics. We don't need all the details, add links, but I want to be sure that as our regional board partners are coming into this conversation, they've thought about tribal beneficial uses, TMDLs, your triennial review, and all of those things in the context of swamp monitoring and our partnership future. Tribes, agencies, and other organizations, you can use the template, you cannot use the template. I just want to hear from you. And so whatever resources, whatever you want to share is welcome, but completing that template is not required by any means. The comparison between the two templates is reflected in this table. So key contacts, recent monitoring, anticipated monitoring, your pie in the sky wish list and sticking points are common among both templates. And then there's additional, water board specific questions for the water board's template. So now I want to begin to hear from you about how I can support you and prepare ourselves, the collective, to have these conversations. So I've got the Google templates with links that are open, so you can download and make a copy and customize, reuse, and remix, as I like to say, to meet your needs. But I'm wondering if other resources might be helpful if we're going to be talking through these templates collectively, if it would be helpful to have a slide deck version instead of a Word document, or an open survey, particularly for tribes and other organizations to contribute instead of having to think about a document. And also we'll be talking about this a little bit later with our 2024 planning, thinking about requiring registration or enabling registration to our team meeting, our Zoom meetings, so that folks can download calendar invites. I know for me, if I don't have something on my calendar, I don't know what's happening. And the nature of our new email list is such that I can't send out calendar invites to the over 1,000 people on our email list right now. But that is a tool that we can use, or anything else. And if there's something that's not in the existing meeting proposals that we'd like to see discussed. So think about that as I discuss the potential meeting structure. The first meeting, I was thinking we could hear from the water boards, and then agency groups, and then tribes, and then reflection, but schedules be crazy. So I'm tempted to just kind of like invite people to present and share whenever they're available, and that's fine. So any thoughts on that before I launch some Zoom polls in general? Okay, great. So I have a couple of Zoom polls because I love the datas. So I think I'm going to launch this poll. There are 3 questions, and this has to do with the pre-agenda, pre-meeting action item. So the first is if you would prefer a themed meeting. So all of the water boards folks share one meeting, all of the tribal folks shared another meeting, all of the agency folks shared another meeting, or random as schedules permit. Can someone tell me if they're seeing the polls on their screen? It should have popped up.
Yep, I'm seeing it.
Yep.
Okay, great. Everyone is welcome to complete this poll. I consider all of you key partners, and your availability to contribute to this process is critical for me. If you don't feel like you're the right person to complete the poll, there's an abstain option for all questions. The second question is, when would you prefer to have additional STU meetings scheduled to discuss? So we've been meeting 4 times a year, and that has worked. We've gotten our meetings down to less than 3 hours. They're short and sweet, and they're to the point. However, permitting and contracts require to kind of expedite our conversations, and I'd like to start meeting to begin these conversations sooner rather than later, so we can get the information that we need to our contracts team and our partners. The third question is, if we're going to meet more frequently, how long do you want the meetings to be? I don't know about you, but I don't like being in front of my computer for 4 or more hours for a single meeting. So just kind of checking in and getting a pulse check on that. Okay. So we've got 66 folks, or 66% of y'all have participated. I'd like to get at least 85%. We're at 83. All right, can we hit 90? Ooh, that'd be exciting. I'll leave it open. Okay, we've got 87%.
Emily, you have a question?
Yeah. Thanks, Jay. I just wanted to ask Anna if the templates that you listed are all on the safety working group website.
Yeah, so they're in the
Okay.
meetings section, and they've been on the meetings table on the right-hand side, the very additional resources table.
Got it.
Scroll down, they're there, or they've been linked in all of the notes since they
Okay.
created. So if you go back to any of the past notes, they'll be there too.
Thank
Great
you.
question. Yeah. Okay, we've got 91%. Awesome. I'm gonna close the poll for the sake of time. If you haven't been able to submit your results, or you want more time, let me know. I'm happy to continue accepting preferences here. Okay, end of the poll. Is it showing on your screens? Oh, share result. No. Zoom is thinking, how about now? All right. So we've got a no preference or themed for question 1 as the dominant responses. Great. We've got some availability the week of November, in December, and then definitely January, February, March, and April. Okay. And we'd like our meetings to be less than 2 hours. Done. Cool. Great.
Well, I would, depending on schedules, I would make an argument, advocate for, if we could get a lot of the water board reps to have a common meeting time, there would be a lot of value in people seeing what the others are saying.
Yeah.
So we might make an exception if a longer meeting might make more sense. So
yeah. Are you among the 3 that meetings should be as long as they need to? No, I'm not trying to cut you off.
In the old days of the bog, we would have all-day meetings.
Sorry, Jay. Ain't nobody got time for that. We're all doing.
That was again the old days. We would have the advisors fly in, and so they were in town. We would take advantage of having them all together and having the group together. So kind of like a round table.
Yeah. Meeting. And I'm open to thinking through and creating spaces like that if that's something the whole community, not just agency folks, can participate in. Yeah, Autumn.
I would also, switching topics here a little bit, I see a lot of people want to do January, February, March, and while I 100% understand that, I wish I could do that too. For permitting purposes, and especially, I think Region 2 realignment specifically is going to be interesting for permitting, but we're finding more and more that we need almost a full year to get things in place. And so I really, really want to push people to get things taken care of early, and at the very least get potential sites and potential species. Other than that, we can work on other aspects of it, but the earlier that happens, the more likely we are going to be able to accommodate those in sampling. because it takes a long time.
Yeah. Thanks, Autumn. Awesome. So I will review those poll results again and set up meetings and things like that. And in the notes when they go out, all of those resources will be there. And of course, I'll send you email blasts with reminders and things like that. So, but it sounds like there was a lot of interest for themed meetings, and I think particularly for water boards folks. So please start filling out your template and reach out if you have any questions. Okay, moving to general Stewie goodness for next year. At this meeting, our last meeting of the year, we generally think about quarterly meetings for the safety work group. And so these would be in addition to the meetings that we have just been talking about. I'm proposing we continue to meet over Zoom. It lowers costs for travel for everyone. It increases access for more folks. It's easier to record and all of that good stuff to share for folks that aren't able to attend. And quarterly 9:30 to 12:30, kind of locking that in and then adjusting our agenda as needed for the last Wednesday of the month in January, April, July, and October seemed to work out for us this year and for the past couple of years. So those dates would be January 31st, April 24th, July 31st, and October 30th. So I am going to launch another poll to kind of get your thoughts on different components of that proposal. Maybe if Zoom will let me. There it is. Okay, so the poll is open. And so just kind of, again, getting a pulse check on how y'all are feeling about this proposal. The first question is, you want to continue meeting over Zoom? Again, there's agree, no preference, disagree, and abstain for all options. You're okay with kind of locking in 9:30 to 12:30 and adjusting as needed is the second question. And for the third, okay with continuing to meet on the last Wednesday of the month in those months that we specified. The fourth is if you'd like to be able to register for the safety work group meetings so that you can download a calendar hold or an invitation, we would open the meeting invitation to folks that didn't register, but by enabling the registration, it gives you the ability to get that calendar invite. And for people like me, that's a delightful thing. And I would set it up where you could download all of it. You would register once and get all of the invites, or you could do one at a time. So, okay, we've got 75% of folks. Let's see if we can hit or beat our 91% participation from the last poll. We're at 83. And we might have dropped some people. I'll give it another minute or less. Coffee's kicking in. I'm starting to feel antsy. All right, 91%. Great. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Again, this is a pulse check. Just trying to see where y'all are without putting people on the spot. So the poll results should be shown on your screen. Zoom's great for a bunch of folks. Locking in the mornings, also good. And we're good with quarterly meetings on those dates. Fantastic. And people either don't have a preference or would like to be able to register ahead of time. Cool, so I will set that up. Thanks for that, y'all. So with that, let's wrap. We've got 9 more minutes, and I want to respect the time that you're giving us today. So we're gonna kind of roll through our wrap up. if you have ideas for future meetings, again, we've got the long-term monitoring priorities assessment would be the core of all of the future meetings until we can kind of get what we need for permits and things like that. But depending on availability and meetings and things like that, we might have room for guest speakers and other things. So if you've got those ideas, pop them in the chat, or send me an email and we can coordinate. I am really pleased and happy you all did that last year around this time and have been giving us ideas over the course of the year. And I think we had like 4 main ideas, and we've had 3 of those guest speakers come and present, and we're working on others. So we're listening, and we'll do our best to accommodate your ideas and requests. So action items, again, I use my spidey senses to predict what these would be, but I'm leaning on you all to help me clarify, or if I missed anything, please speak up. So for our quick updates, same as last time, Jay and I will tag team and distribute the 2021 Bass Lakes report and others as soon as we receive the organics data. For 2023 sampling, our Moss Landing team is writing up the cruise report, and we'll work together to get that posted early next year. For the final monitoring plan, Jay is kindly accepting comments until the end of this month, so only a couple more weeks. And we'll finalize shortly thereafter, and we'll post online. And just for folks that regional board folks and contracts and OEMans and Swamp IQ and things like that, I'll schedule and coordinate kickoff meetings for February or March, and I'll send out a scheduling poll in the next couple of weeks to start getting those on our calendars. For Biomonitoring California, I didn't hear any action items, but speak up if I missed. Harry, I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, I just noticed that same February, March 2023 there.
I'm glad you're awake, and yes, I will correct that. Thanks.
So that was Anna's fault. I copied it out in here.
Yeah, no, that was definitely me. Yeah, thanks, Harry. And I'll fix the slides before they're posted, but the mistake will be embraced in the recording for perpetuity. Okay, for item 6, for the realignment, if you are a representative of a tribe or a community-based organization or an agency partner that I haven't already spoken to that would like to participate or stay informed in the process, please shoot me an email and I'll start sending out communications as appropriate. For our long-term monitoring priorities assessment, regional board folks, get on to those templates, and others, check them out and let me know if you have questions or if there are other resources I can develop to support you as you prepare to contribute to those conversations. And if you know that you want to have space in that conversation to talk through the needs of your program or whatever, let me know and we'll start thinking about scheduling. So top of mind is OEHA and our public health partners. I'm looking at you. I want to hear from you at some point. Others are welcome, of course. Did I say one? Cool. For 24 STU meetings, I'll set up calls so that registration is an option. And distribute the registration links in the notes and on our website and things like that. As usual, I'll post the meeting materials and recording on our meetings page as soon as possible. I'm going to try and get the recording up this week. But the notes are going to take a little while. I'm actually headed to the tribal conference all of next week, so the notes will be 2 or 3 weeks out. The recording will be up, and I'll get a link to that on our website, and I'll send an email as soon as possible so folks can go back if they'd like.
I have a question for Kelly, just making sure, is it okay if we post your slides on our meeting page?
That should be all right.
Cool.
I can send over a copy.
Yeah, and it'll be in PDF version and incorporated into our slide deck.
And thanks again for your excellent presentation. One of my action items in that regard is I'm going to recommend that a few folks watch that. So, thanks again.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And we're in all of our recordings, there are chapters now, so it's easy to send a link just to a specific agenda item, or if you're watching it, you don't have to watch us for 2 hours or 3 hours. You could just go straight to the item of interest, watch that 10 to 30 minute item, and then enjoy the rest of your day. So with that, again, I'll send out information on the quarterly meetings. I'm going to look at those poll results and potentially schedule at least one meeting before the end of this year. I'll look at the poll results to see which option is better, and then use the poll to schedule other things for that week. Just a reminder, December 14th is the Monitoring Council meeting, so shout out and attend if you can. And it'll be on microplastics, and we'll be providing a safety work group update as well. And with that, we'll see you in maybe January, maybe sooner. Thanks, y'all. Anything else?
Thanks, Anna, for your outstanding organization as usual.
Great.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Billy, and
Appreciate
team for all of your
everything.
awesome work.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Billy.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
So
Thanks,
Anna,
Jane, Anna.
you can save the chat.
Yes.